Hey, today we want to talk about this question. Why are the teachings and life of Jesus important for disciple making?
Well, it's because Jesus shows us by his life and teachings how we should live as disciples. That's the key thing. Do you want to share this passage that's really guiding us, Scott?
Yeah, here it is. Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I will be with you always to the very end of the age.
So the Great Commission of Jesus, which we're going to get to and talk more about in the subsequent questions, a lot of people think it's like just make disciples by teaching, but it actually says teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. So there's a couple of things that we think are important in that. The first is that Jesus really did think and teach his disciples to really follow him. Let me read this passage to you from Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 and following. He said this, "Not everyone who calls me Lord, Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." He goes on and says this. He says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock." So it really does mean that in disciple making, it's the teachings and the life of Jesus that are really important.
Yeah. So sometimes you've used the phrase obedience-based disciple making.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's really what Jesus teaches, is obedience-based discipleship. Now, Jesus' life is also super important. It's not just that he gave us these teachings. When God appeared in the person of Jesus and called us to be disciples of Jesus, he also gave us a life. In fact, the sort of the heartbeat of that life is the way Jesus loved. And Scott, I think there's nothing more important today than how we understand love.
Absolutely. One of the things that just really has convicted both Bobby and me is that we want to be people who, when people look at us, they see that love is what drives them, because that's the way Jesus was. But his love that drove him to call people to obedience. So it wasn't like a fuzzy love that was just kind of whatever you want to do is fine with me, but it was a love that said, I love you so much, I want you to be a God follower. Yeah. I want you to find your true joy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, Jesus described it for us. He said, "A new command I have for you, love one another." And then he said this, "As I have loved you," speaking to the disciples, "as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know you're my disciples, if you love one another." So that the ultimate sign of true disciples are the way that they love, and that they love like Jesus. And then lastly, you put both of them together. You've got the teachings of Jesus and the model of Jesus. And as disciples, that's what we focus on, his teachings and his models.
Yes. The thing that I'm most convinced about today, and I think what every one of us, if we want to be a disciple maker, if we really just want to live with joy, Jesus needs to be the hero of your story. In the world that we live in right now, marketing, advertising, they want to tell you that you are the hero of your story. And what I've discovered, and you have too, right?
Yeah.
Is we make lousy heroes.
Yeah.
And the New Testament is Jesus is the hero to their story. And even calling somebody a Christian, a Christian in the early church.
Yeah.
Remember, disciple is used, over 300 times?
Yeah, I think it's like 290 times.
Okay, so it's a bunch of times. Christian is only used a couple of times, but disciples were called Christians just because they were so crazy about Jesus, right?
Yeah.
That's who they talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to be what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, totally.
We have got to say that Jesus is the hero of our story.
Yeah.
And live like that.
So it's to follow Jesus' teachings and to model after Jesus' life.
That's good.
And so we hope you'll find the material helpful.